When should you use different frame rates? The cinematic standard frame rate is 24 frames per second, or 2398. They're slightly different settings for sync reasons, but they're basically the same. I prefer to shoot as much as possible at this frame rate. I just love the dreamy look that movies have that make everything feel a little bit more immersive. The next frame rate you might want to shoot at is 30 frames per second, which makes everything look a little too real, and I don't personally like it, but it does work in certain use cases. The internet standard is 30 frames per second, and a lot of devices display at multiples of 30, which makes playback at 30 frames per second very smooth, so you might prefer that. If you want things to look like real life, 30 frames per second is great, but I don't really like it, personally. I think it looks a little bit uncanny. Higher frame rates like 60 frames per second or 120 frames per second are great for slow motion because you can shoot those frame rates and then in post, slow them down and you get beautiful slow motion footage. And a lot of prosumer cameras won't have their best codecs in these frame rates. For example, I can shoot RAW at 60 frames per second on a camera like this, but I can only shoot H.264 at 120. There are plenty of specialized high-speed cameras out there like the Pixboom, which I really want to get my hands on, that can shoot like 1,000 frames per second. And the higher frames per second you go, the slower you can make your motion. But keep in mind, the higher your frame rate goes, you need more light to get the same image. At 60 frames per second, you're gonna need twice as much light as you do at 30. At 120, you're gonna need twice as much light as you did at 60. So when you get to these specialized cameras that can use super high frame rates, you're gonna need super fast lenses and you're gonna need a lot of light. Some high-end productions will shoot in these higher frame rates because then they can get more frames to add CGI in. It can make the CGI look a lot more realistic. But if you're shooting anything that doesn't need a lot of CGI, you probably just wanna stick to 24 or 30. One camera in particular that has really crazy frame rates is that new GoPro Mission 1. I know it's already out, but I'm waiting for the one that has a Micro Four Thirds mount because I have some really cool ideas on how I could use that camera. Hopefully GoPro doesn't go bankrupt before I can get a hold of one.